Welcome to Romera Records Virtual Cast. Today we have on Laura Dill. How's it going, Laura?
Wonderful. How are you?
I'm great. I always start off my podcast with just telling people how I found you and DeAndre Porter. Everybody
Yeah.
knows. He brought me to you and said that you'd be good to have on. Let's
Awesome.
let's get into what you do and let's talk about like how you got started and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Way back, I come from a very large family. I'm one of eight. Five of them are adopted. So obviously, I was raised by absolute saints. But with that being said, we didn't have a ton of money. So I knew that college wasn't going to be a thing. I was never going to make it to that step. So I joined the Army instead, and I figured the Army could help pay for anything that I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to get into the medical field. I just didn't know kind of what outlet. I wasn't the best scholar. I did go to medical assisting in high school, really liked that in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, where I pretty much was born and raised. I was actually born in Jersey, lived in New York on Long Island, and then moved to Oklahoma in the third grade. So from there, joining the Army kind of launched me into the next step. I did it right out of high school and ended up getting medically honorably discharged because I had chronic neck and shoulder issues.
Hmm.
So being in the healthcare field, having chronic pain, having to have a surgery to try and correct it kind of just put me in this realm of I'm broken. How do I get fixed? What's going to fix me? Do I do self-care? Do I go down the PT? Didn't have the money for PT. You had to pay a copay every single time you went in. It was very, very expensive. And so I was kind of just lost, lost on kind of what to do, and tried to do some self-care, exercise, but I would just show up to the gym and just follow the person that looked fit. I'd see somebody super fit at the gym, and I would like see what machines they would hop on, and I would hop on those machines too. So completely chaotic every time I went. So as I got a little older, as I became a mother, as I started kind of just being a self-educator, finding cheap online personal training certifications. And I would study, buy them, take the test. And then, I was an online certified personal
Mhm.
trainer. And, some of my friends would be like, oh, well, you should train me. You should train me. I'm like, oh no, I only did that because I wanted to kind of train for free. And I was really into Tai Bo because it was easy. And I could stick my daughter in the bouncy chair and I could just punch around. And I started seeing, obviously physical changes, but my posture was getting better and that chronic pain was going away. So I knew exercise was probably, what I needed to focus on. But life happens and you have a job, and it just you kind of get lost in it. But I worked in the medical field. I was a medical assistant. Every day, get up, go to the office, and patients would come in, and the doctor would write them a prescription, or they'd be in pain and the doctor would write them a prescription for pain pills, or they would have diabetes and severely overweight and they would write them another prescription. And I was like, this is a crazy world. Like, nobody is telling this person to exercise, and the doctor is not telling them to stop eating the Snickers bar before bed. Like, it was really weighing on my chest to say, like, am I in a place to step in and say, hey, maybe you should go for a walk 3 days a week? And physicians can be quite intimidating, especially when you're like, you don't have a degree, you just have a certification as a medical assistant. And so that's really spiked me. I'm very competitive, and I'm like, well, I need more education. So I started taking online courses,
Hmm.
online sports nutrition, online fit, another type of fitness coach, another type of aerobics coach. So now I have all these certifications, and I'm like, what do I do with them? I'm full of knowledge. How do I share this knowledge? And so one of the nurse practitioners I worked for really liked like my my current body appearance. Right, you're doing very well, you're working out, you're physically fit. I hear you talking to other people in the office and helping them, and you go at your lunch every day and run. Let's do something with this. So she allowed me to start nutritionally counseling our patients.
Mm.
So if it was a diabetic or a yearly exam, she'd come out and she's like, "You're on, Laura." And I bring my little piece of paper with calories and what you should be, what you should focus on when you go home. Like, yeah, we gave you a prescription, but what else should you do? And it was always so inspiring, because then they would come in 3 months later and they've lost 15 pounds. And they're like, Laura, it was all because of your help. It had nothing to do with the prescription. It had to do with the care and the time that I spent with those patients, just to kind of catapult them to the next step. And then that really made me think, like, I could do this. Like, that gave me the confidence that I can do something on my own. So I launched Laura's Fitness Boot Camp in
Mm.
Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. And all of a sudden it blew up to where I had 30 women that would show up at 5:30 in the morning at a play park for $5 a visit. And they would just follow me. And, I had the Army background. And so it was a lot like Army boot camp. Like, let's go, let's run, let's do push-ups, let's do sit-ups, let's do jumping jacks. And they kept coming back. Like, the women just loved it. It was that group feel, and it was cheap. And I would take their little $5. I had this little bucket that they would drop their money in. And if they couldn't afford it, I never said anything. They
Mm.
would just show up. Who knows if they paid or not? I don't care. You're here to get healthy. You're here because maybe your home life is rough and you just want an out type of thing. And so then we had 2 days a week, 2 nights a week, and then Saturday morning. So they had an opportunity to come 5 times a week. And it was a great routine. From there, obviously, I wanted to learn more about fitness, right? One of the doctors I was working for at the time had actually recruited me. She had found through, nurses talking and doctors talking, I need a nurse who's more on the holistic side. How do I find a medical assistant who's kind of on that same train as me? And one of the nurses that I worked with years before said, well, there's this girl named Laura Dill, and she's a total Nazi when it comes to fitness. Like, she would be perfect for you. And so I got a phone call. I had the interview. She was a heavyweight bodybuilder,
Oh, snap.
Dr. Michelle Neal. Like, when I Googled her, I was like, holy smokes. Oh my God. Like I was like, I've hit big. I'm going to work for a bodybuilder and be able to help treat her patients. So we had a really good system. She was very holistic. When these people would come in, a lot of their goals were to get their hormones under control. Maybe they were a bodybuilder and they jacked themselves up because they used too much testosterone, and now they need her to help kind of come back down and get on the right medications to help. A lot of men were getting, their breasts would actually grow after being on a particular type of testosterone. And so we would have to help them come off of it pretty much. And so there was a lot of nutrition counseling. We did a lot of body composition testing. We also did functional movement screens. Have you ever heard of the functional movement systems with Gray Cook? Okay.
No, I haven't.
So I am a functional movement specialist. I guess I should go through my list of everything
Yeah.
over the years, what I have had. So once I actually launched with Dr. Michelle Neal, and she did the functional movement. So these bodybuilders would come in and we'd put them through a movement screen, because bodybuilding is great, but it's very dysfunctional. It's a very one joint at time movement. And we are, as humans, made to move in these very complex planes, and they lost that over time. So they might look big and buff and awesome, but they can't touch their toes. They can't sit in an Indian style. They can't go get something underneath the kitchen table. All you hear is, like, they do not have mobility or flexibility to get it. They might be strong as a bull, but that's about all. And their joints take the big hit for it. So the 7 movement functional movement screen really makes the invisible visible again, right? So can you touch your toes? Can you do a squat without your heels lifting? Or are you falling over? Can you do an inline lunge and keep your spine erect, keep core stability? So I was fascinated with these movements, but I had no idea what she was looking at. And so I was like, well, I want to be that one day. I want to be a functional movement specialist. But I'm like fire hose. I'm like, just give it to me. I want it all. And I want to be as knowledgeable as you. But we started off with something called hardstyle kettlebell challenge through the Russian kettlebell challenge with Pavel Sutalin. Huge network of people, very functionally fit people. And I constantly still had that chronic low back pain, even though I was a runner and I worked out. I always had like nagging pain on that posterior chain. And so she's like, let's start working with kettlebells. She was working on her certification, and she was terrible at coaching. She was terrible at coaching, really good, but terrible at coaching. So in order to get your certification through RKC, you had to be able to coach. It was your final part on your 3-day cert when you went. And so if we had a patient cancel, she'd drag my butt into a room and teach me how to swing a kettlebell or goblet squat or Turkish get up. And I thought, this lady is so weird with this Russian stuff. Like, what is going on? And about 3 months into this weird way of training me, I kind of had this light bulb moment. I was like, holy crap, my back has not hurt in weeks. Like, I would go do an EKG on a patient and like my back would just spasm. Like, just having this forward hold position and over a patient for 2 minutes to put the leads on, I would like have to kind of arch my back all the time. And just one day I realized I didn't have that pain anymore. And I jumped on the body comp machine and I had dropped like 5 pounds of fat, even though my body weight was the same, right? So if I would have just stayed on the scale, I would have noticed. But luckily we had the body comp machine, and I was like converting my whole body, like my system was changing. And I was like, all these from kettlebells? What is this? And so she said, you're really good at these kettlebells. Maybe you should also become a certified coach. And I was like, well, maybe my boot campers would like that, incorporate some kettlebell swings and stuff out in the field. And so she's like, I'll pay for half of your first cert if you do it. And I was like, all right. Well, the first cert is called HKC, and it's only $600. So she paid $3, I paid $3, became certified. So now her nurse, or we'll call medical assistants, was certified. So, we would teach people how to swing a kettlebell in our little patient rooms in order to get their heart rate up for 10 minutes a day, just to start them on the journey of fitness. Very safe way of doing it, and squats and things like that, lunges. And then that was it. That was the tip of the iceberg for the next 15 years of my life, because I went to that certification, and the coaches there, which are big deals, like these kettlebell coaches know their shit. Like, they are good at what they do. And they're like, you should go to the next level, which is RKC. And I'm like, well, what is that? I had no idea. And it's the kettlebell swing, cleans, snatches, military press, Turkish get up. It's the deep 6 and front squats. So you have to be able to nail these movements with very heavy kettlebells and complete a 5-minute snatch test with a 16 kilogram kettlebell. And I was like, dude, I haven't touched like over a 15, 20 pound kettlebell. What do you mean 35 pound kettlebell for 5 minutes? Like, I don't even know. So for 6 months straight, I just trained every day. I Googled things, I watched YouTube videos. And at that time, back in 2010, there really wasn't a lot on YouTube with kettlebells. Very foreign, you couldn't find anything. And so I just winged it. I just did what I thought I could do. Meanwhile, that physician I worked for got fired from our agency. Oh, you want to know why?
Why?
Because she stopped referring out. We weren't referring for x-rays. We weren't referring for cardiologists. We weren't referring to all these different doctors because we were taking care of our patients. That just proved to me right there, the system's all about money, not about health. And I was like, I am this old and realizing this right now. And so at that point, my fitness boot camp was launching. I was getting some recognition because I was launching into the next kind of levels of fitness, of kettlebell coaching. And people were seeking out kettlebells at the time. Like, something sparked it. Probably somebody in the Olympics or something probably got shown on a commercial swinging a kettlebell or something. I don't know. But, it's like, oh, kettlebell. And so I got so busy with the coaching of boot camp. The local gym called the Hub in Broken Arrow wanted a kettlebell class, and they found out I was certified. So here I am teaching 5 kettlebell classes a week, 5 boot camps a week, and still working full time. Somewhat like you're just all over the place, work. And then I think the day that kind of broke me was I was driving to work and I didn't know what work I was going to. Like, am I coaching someone today or am I going to the office for a patient? Like, seriously, had that moment. I pulled off to the side of the road and I was like, something's got to give. And my husband had already said that, like, you're going to have to make a choice. Like, what makes you happy? I said, well, when I coach, it's not work. There's not a minute of it that's work. My feet hit the ground and I'm super stoked to work with Miss So-and-so to help her feel better today versus going and watching these physicians just write prescriptions. Because once my doctor left, they don't fire the nurse. I didn't do anything wrong. I work underneath her license. They moved me from office to office. They moved me into the like training type of stuff, or I was afloat, just whatever, put her wherever. And so at that point I was only working 3 days a week, and me and my husband kind of looked at each other. I said, I have this lump of cash, because every time these people pay me, either I go buy more equipment or I just put it in the bank. So we opened a gym. I got a location, I got my big fancy sign, and I was there when I wasn't at work 3 days a week. And then what started to happen was people wanted to work out with me on the days I was at work. Like, I was having to pretty much say no to people. And I was like, yeah, this is it. So finally I resigned from what I thought I was going to do until I was an old lady. And it was the best thing, because within a week I had like 10 more private clients. I launched 6 more classes. Like, it just literally exploded to where that was like 6 months in. So within another 6 months, we had to move to a bigger location.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So meanwhile, remember that functional movement aspect of it. So within RKC, if you're having a client who can't swing or get deep in their swing, or they're squatting and their heels are lifting, or they can't quite get deep enough, within our manual, it says refer to a functional movement specialist. We didn't have one of those in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to become one. So I saved up my pennies and I took the online course, took the test once. You had to have like a 70 something percent. I think I got like a 68. I was like, what? So I had to retake it, get it, pass with flying colors. And then, so now I was the FMS coach. I was the kettlebell coach, like, awesome. And so I was helping people pretty much move better and move more often in a very safe way, right? So yeah, people would come to me for weight loss, but that's just a byproduct of moving better. Right? Like, just making a better, well-oiled machine, kind of like what you do, making your machines work and making them functional. I was making the human being more functional and just feel better and boost their morale. And so from there, we have another level of both of those certs. So RKC separated. We were with John Duquesne and Pavel Susaline, and they divorced. So John Duquesne and the RKC, there was more of like a marketing money type push, and Pavel's not about that. Pavel's about sharing strength, how to be strong first, power to you, comrade, he's Russian. And so we separated, and I obviously went with Pavel, and I was grandfathered into the strong first system. And so once there, what do you do with your level 1? Well, you grow and you move on, you go to level 2. So level 2 is a lot harder, a lot heavier. And as a female, there wasn't at that time a lot of female level 2s, because you had to be able to strict press a 53-pound kettlebell on one side, which is quite hard, because a lot of times, when they go to that strict press, there's like this, it ends up being a side bend for a lot of females. And so to be able to get that core strength and stability, it took a lot of practice to be able to get that 53.9 pound kettlebell up. And so it took about 9 months to get that press. You had to do that. And then you also had to pass another snatch test, jerks, a bent press. I don't know if you're familiar with the old strongman bent press. So a bent press is kind of like a windmill press. You're kind of getting underneath the belt and then having to stand up with it. So it's like a strongman competition type, and you have to be able to pass all those to a specific mark in order to get to the next level. So I was with a handful of women who got level 2, and then I went ahead and graduated and went into the next step of functional movement, which is the prescription of corrective strategies, corrective exercises. So now I'm FMS 2, Strong First 2, and now I am the only one in Oklahoma that holds those ranks.
Dang.
Yes, I would have people travel from Texas, from Oklahoma City, from Wichita, Kansas, from Missouri to train with me to become a coach of what I do. So at that point, I had developed to be a coach of the coaches. So I would travel around with Strong First and be on the floor to help new coaches come in and do what I did all the time. Absolute amazing. I mean, just amazing growth and development on myself, and then allowing, and working with other people. I had a lot of male clients that, they ended up telling me, a couple months into our training, I only came back to work with you because I saw you pick up a really heavy bell and I couldn't, and I wanted to beat you. And I'm like, you're kidding me. Like, well, they couldn't do a Turkish get up with a 70-kilo bell, which, is a lot of weight, or a 32-kilo bell, which is 70 pounds. They're like, you just got underneath it. That I was like, nope, that chick's not beating me. So they kept coming back. I'm like, well, that's good for business. Keep on coming back. I'll keep competing with you. But it wasn't always about that. It was just about moving well and moving better underneath weight. And then from there, I kind of graduated into barbell coaching. So I became a Strong First lifter, which it's a powerlifting certification. Our coach is Michael Hartle, and he was Olympic powerlifting coach. And so that was, loved having the barbell aspect of stuff. And kind of funny how my younger crowd ate up on the barbell lifts. But the trick at my facility was you had to have an FMS screen. And if you scored above a 14, you could come into my group classes, because that meant that you were somewhat safe. And, your imbalances and weaknesses weren't so big to where you would get hurt in a group setting. Mm-hmm. Anything below a 14 pretty much forecasts and predicts an injury. Like something is going to happen if you jump into general fitness. So we want to make that baseline of your fitness perfect, right? General physical preparedness. Can you touch your toes? Can you go for a run without pain the next day? Can you do a squat and not fall over? And if you're in that group setting, it's really hard for the coach to fix that, right? So everybody, if they were below 14, they had to come and see me privately for 8 sessions. During that 8 sessions, I'm working on mobility, stability, and their functional movement. And by the time they're at the 8, they test out, they test again, they're above a 14, then they go to group and they're like, I've made it. I'm in group now. And then once they have hit a certain mark, I had phases 1, 2, and 3. If they can get to 3, then they can work on barbells. If you're not at a 3, don't you ask me, because I'm not beating my head up against the wall to teach you how to do a snatch or a front squat, because it's going to be easier to teach you on a kettlebell because I can move you in different planes. Barbell is one strict ass bar. If your body doesn't move well, I'm not doing a dance to get you around that bar.
It's unforgiving.
And it actually, I've done my own studies with functional movement. If I train 9 to 12 weeks under a barbell for a deadlifting competition, my score drops below a 16, and 21 is the highest on FMS. I can score a 21 cold if I'm training with kettlebells. Once I get behind that barbell for that amount of time, dude, I lose my mobility. It is terrible. And that just puts me at risk for an injury, hip, knee, neck, whatever. So I'll only do 9 to 12 weeks of barbell, and then I go back to kettlebells for that same amount of time and get my movement back. It's just phenomenal. I see these lifters, and I have some asymmetries. Like you can see here, my right arm has a lot more movement, and that comes from how I deadlift. I have an under on my right and an over with my left. And so I'm internally rotated, I'm externally rotated. And so that's, my own thing that I need to work on. Sometimes I'm too close to the problem, I don't focus on it. But it's just fascinating of what happens to your body because of the barbell. Now, if I was only training with kettlebells, that's a very fluid motion. And typically you become a little more symmetrical because of it. Yeah. So very, very awesome. But from all of that, I am fixing people because, I had these group of athletes. I worked with the Broken Arrow High School, the golfers, the Pride, the marching band, getting them in that kind of conditioning state to be able to march and actually hold their equipment, their trumpets or drums, and just love working with those student athletes. But then their moms would want help, or I'm going to send you to grandma. And I start prehabbing people's before their knee replacements
Mm.
to where a majority of them postponed their knee replacement. They didn't need it anymore.
Oh, dang.
Because we learned that because their calf was too tight, their quad was too tight, they were not using kind of that joint by joint component of our body. You know, if their ankle was too stiff, then their knee had to move more. If their hip was too stiff, their knee had to move more, right? So they were wearing out their knee because up and down was messed up. So let's open your ankle. Let's get more of your foot to be a stability factor. Let's open up your hips and let them become more mobile. And now you don't have so much back pain because your hips are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And so they're walking out of there. Oh, I can sit in an Indian style. I haven't done that in 16 years. Look at me. Because I get them on the floor, getting them back to those fundamental patterns again, those crawling patterns, those rocking patterns, those rolling patterns of what we intrinsically know as a toddler. Getting them back to those fundamental states and then building them from there, instead of go join a fitness boot camp and build, on top of your dysfunction you already have. Like nobody was breaking it down again. And so from there, I thought, man, I'm tapping into the rehab world here. I'm tapping into physical therapy.
Yeah.
How can I make my company more sustainable and me not be here all the time, right? For 10 years, 5 o'clock in the morning, being there 7 o'clock at night. Do not get me wrong. Loved it. Not a day of that did I complain, but how can I make this grow to where my daughter can kind of keep it up? If my daughter wants to come in here and work, or other coaches. And, in all the grand scheme of thing, I was actually working on an ENT, like, what was his, it was a surgeon, a pediatric surgeon out of Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like an ENT, like working on babies' faces and noses and throat and stuff. And so he would travel in every other weekend and train with me to kind of keep him open because of the position he's always in. And so he had found me online through FMS, and then found out I also was a kettlebell coach, and he wanted the best of both worlds. So he would travel in, he would call me on a Friday night, weirdest person on God's green earth. He was a different culture. So the way he talked and did things was very weird, to where at times I wanted my husband to be at the facility with me because I was just nervous. But then I found out it was just his personality. It was absolutely fine. But after a couple of months of working with him, I told him, hey, I'm going to go back to college, or go to college. I never went to college. He's like, why? So I want a degree. He's like, in what? I said, I want to be a physical therapist. He's like, why on earth would you do that? You know more than a majority of the PTs I know. I said, well, I need that piece of paper on the wall. I want to get people in here who need help and charge insurance companies. He's like, you'll kick yourself for it. Don't do it. And I was like, well, easy enough for you to say, you have degrees hanging on your wall already. I said, it's kind of one of my life goals that I didn't know I wanted. Mm-hmm. And I had a vision to build a clinically based facility. Like, people that had physical therapy, where do they go after PT? They were hurt once. Are they just going to go back out and do what they did before? Or are we going to come up with a plan for them to stay out of pain? So I had this vision. I'm going to be the PT or the PTA. I wasn't sure which one I was doing. And then have a chiropractor, a physical therapist, an acupuncture, a massage therapist, just have a home for all these awesome multi-disciplinary, what we call body movers, under one roof, to where if somebody came into me, I would be able to help them somehow, some way. So after my son was born, I have a 5-year-old, I said, I'm going back to school. So I started my prerequisites and realized PT is very expensive. And because of the knowledge I already had, I got accepted into the physical therapy assistant program out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And those words reminisce from that surgeon that kept telling me, when you get into school, you're going to know more than your professors. And I was like, no, times have changed, dude. You went to college 20 years ago, blah, 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 you don't know. And then I'd get in there and actually, he was right. There were days that I was like, are they really teaching these people this? why are we learning this? Like, this is ridiculous. We need to be learning how to make these people move better. Like, everything is so, bureaucracy and paperwork, and you can't do this and you can't do that. And these are plans that you have to follow. And I'm like, but not everybody needs that. You have to look at it from a point of like the FMS aspect. Like, let's put them through these motions and see where they're deficit and work from there. Not every single body is the same. And so halfway, through my schooling, my husband, the amazing person he is, got this awesome promotion, transferred to Dallas. So I had to abandon my 3-year goal plan of how I was building this amazing facility. And my business was called Kettlebell 360. So we were pretty much going to branch out from there. And I had to abandon it. I stayed in Tulsa for 1.5 years, finished school. My daughter and my husband moved here. I kept the little one, and I just finished school. Pandemic hit, COVID hit. It was spring break of 19, and school was closed. I was supposed to graduate in May. So this is March. And I was like, what are we going to do? So I came back. I came to Tulsa, or Texas. So I left Tulsa, and I was like, well, I'll just do school from here, from the house. Finished out school. And then I was left to wonder, what's my next step? Like, what am I supposed to do? I wanted to make this clinical place in Tulsa, and now I'm down here in Texas, and my God, meanwhile, I'm a kettlebell sport athlete. On top of helping people, I also compete at an amateur level, of course. Throughout those years, I got to what's considered a candidate for mastery sport on the amateur level, which was kind of as high as I could go without either dropping weight or increasing my bell size. So I competed in the amateur rankings in the weight class of 75 kilos or over with the double 16s in jerks and snatches. Love it. I always tell people, like, if I'm going to help people, I want to be able to move to compete and be able to say, yeah, I do that too. Not just a coach that sits on the sidelines and coaches from the sidelines, which once you get older, sometimes those are the best coaches, to be honest with you. They've been there, they've experienced it. But throughout the whole time I was in school, I was also competing. And then thought, well, what do I do when I get to Texas? Do I open another kettlebell gym? Because I had to close it down to move to Texas. We're having all my clients. They're all just, what do I do without my coach? So I was training them through online virtually for a while. Now I only have 3 kettlebell sport athletes underneath me because my whole system has changed. So now that I'm here in Texas, I kind of got stuck treating patients throughout the COVID pandemic at nursing homes, dealing with, they're stuck, they're alone, no family members can come in. They had COVID, they're recovering, 10 up to 10 patients a day, treating them pretty much. I was in a shopping bag and a face shield, sweating, treating these 80-year-old people that haven't moved their entire life. Like, that's why they're in there, right? They have lack of mobility, stability, and flexibility. So I just thought, oh, once again, I'm back like 15 years. Like, I feel like I was in the doctor's office again. Like, I need to put a stop to it. So I was doing some home health stuff too, and working with mainly kids with like CP and some other disabilities. And I thought, okay, I'm a good person for this field, but I think my skill is wasted. So I started Googling things, and I found this company called Action On Site. They were looking for kind of like a athletic trainer, physical therapist in the industrial side of things. And I thought, what is this? So of course I applied, and of course I got hired, and it was kind of God in a way, because I didn't want to see these people in a nursing home. And so now I'm being put at the front again, because, a lot of people, they do these type of jobs that repetitive motion, awkward postures, force and exertion, they get hurt, and then they are on disability, or they just can't do what they love anymore because of what they do for a living. And so now I get dropped into these facilities and I get to train new people how to move better, right? Like that is me in a nutshell. Like, don't move like that, move like this. And so from there, I only worked for the Action On-Site for 8 hours a week. So I'd go 4 hours a time, work with new people, watch older people work, and just correct it and give them coaching and education. And how you feeling today? Oh, your elbow hurts? Well, let me watch you work. When you do it, get underneath. And these people that I'm working with pick tires all day. They throw tires. So they have to pick 16 tires. They're manually tossing 16 tires. Well, there's a better way to do it. There's a more efficient way. I'm a huge person that looks at compensatory strategies. Like, how do I make it more habitual in a clean way versus them getting fatigued and just reverting back to what they think is good. So kind of a retrain the brain, and just nerded out, totally nerded out. Company loved it. And I got recruited from 2 skilled nursing facilities to work for them full time. And so I had to call the owner of Action On-Site and say, hey, I got an opportunity, even though I love what I do here. Sometimes money does talk, getting a job. And I thought, let's just get a job and see what I want to do from there. And then she said, no, ma'am, you're going to work for me. So she hired me for additional 24 hours a week, plus the 8 hours as a coach at the facilities. She was like, I'm not quite sure what I want you for yet. We're going to figure it out. Because I was such a nerd with the functional movement. She wanted to really take that and grow her business more because of it. And so that was it. Now I work for her full time as their training and education coordinator. And I do all their training. I help 8, 9, 10, currently 10 clinicians that are physical therapists and athletic trainers with their clinical base at their facilities. And we nerd out about movement and how to get people underneath what they're doing for, what they do every single day. We help them move better and keep them in the playing field and off the sidelines at work, right? Nobody wants to be on lost time. Nobody wants to be on disability. Nobody wants to not be able to do things that they love at home because of what they did at work. And so we keep them clean. We keep them clean. We keep them moving. So now from here, I am still competing in the kettlebell world. My next competition is May 7th. Obviously, I'm not looking for any medals or anything. It's mainly just to get back in. It's one of the first ones coming back out of the pandemic. I'm super excited about that. I also, in a very amateur way, like to also throw for the Highland Games. Have you ever heard of the Highland Games?
Yes, I actually had on a guy who won the Highland Games.
What was his name?
I can't even remember his name. He's got a podcast called the UMSO Podcast.
Okay, after
SO. But yeah, I think he's like a 2 or 3 time winner of the Highland Games.
Yeah. So Matt Vincent, John Ogan.
That's him.
Matt
Vincent.
Yeah. So Matt, huge inspiration. I had a co-coach of mine that Broken Arrow High School had a career exploration program that they used Kettlebell 360. So they'd give me high school students that weren't quite knowing what they wanted to do in life, and they would send them over to me. And then one of them stuck around. One became a chiropractor. It's amazing what these kids do. But my mom's from Scotland. And so I'm a dual citizen of Great Britain. So I thought, well, I'll do something with this. I threw shot put in high school. So let's do field events as an adult. And so I found somebody in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that wasn't a coach, but had done it for so long. He was like, I'll take you on. Like, I'll show you what's out there. So started throwing and competing and putting on my kilts and having a great time. My family loves it because they get to all come and watch, and there's a lot of beer involved, and it's just fun getting underneath that heavy weight and earning a trophy, for throwing the farthest or whatever. And so Highland Games, kettlebell sports, I mean, staying active, having something to work towards is kind of what I try and promote to people. People become very static in life, like they don't set a goal anymore. And so whether it be a race, like a color run, a fun run, or sign up for a kettlebell competition, whatever, there's just an ending point, and you have the process, like trust the process, and then have fun with the day that you go and compete. Like, it's just so fascinating. And, I do work with kind of that older class of people and they're still getting underneath the weight. And so when I talk to younger folks, I'm like, just do it now. So when you are 50, you can still touch your toes and, reach behind your back and have good mobility still, and not be like those people in the nursing homes that I was having to treat because they couldn't move anymore.
Yeah.
Just stay moving. And so we, as Action On-Site, we actually just picked up tactical athletes, which is going to be our first responders, our police officers. And it was really fascinating. I was up in Vancouver 2 weeks ago, and I launched with our company a week-long rollout. And so we launched 2 precincts, and we put them through the functional movement screen. And oh my gosh, was it an eye-opener for them, an eye-opener for us as well, to say, hey, you have your vest on, how can you move with that vest on, or those 42 pounds of everything on you? How quick can you reach to your gun? How quick can you reach to your taser, without potentially hurting yourself? And it was scary. They can't move in that gear. So if I'm going to put them into the gear, I need to create a program that honestly gives them hyper mobility within the gear, right? Or out of the gear when they're in the gear, it's somewhat normal. And so, for these 70 something police officers, I've been working on programs for 2 weeks and assigning them those movement parameters to say, you need to do this in order to move better, getting them back to those rolling patterns, rocking patterns, kneeling patterns, and grow from there. They all come with injuries. Right? I was running and chasing after a guy and I rolled my ankle, or I jumped over the fence and came down and hurt my knee wrong. Right? So now we're working with aging people who forget how to move. Well, they're the people who need to be moving. They're the people who need to go from sitting in their patrol car to bolting. And so we're super excited to be able to work with them in order to get that community safer in the big picture of things. So tactical athletes, industrial athletes, and then of course just the normal humans that just want to move better. Desk jockeys, they sit all day. They have no idea that they need to get up and move.
Yeah.
It's like every 20 minutes, just do something else. And, now that I'm in this role, this is probably the first time in my adult life I've kind of sat behind a computer during the day for work and developing things and flyers and whatever I'm making. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to get up. Like, I got to get up too. And so sometimes it's just getting down on the ground, getting on both knees and just doing some hip work. Or I use this right here and I'll do some squats. Like, you got to move. And we all get stuck in that just rhythm of life. And it's like, oh, somebody needs to step in and remind me. And that's what I do for Action On-Site, is remind people to take care of themselves, move and groove.
So you covered a lot.
I did. I'm all over the place, from a gym owner to an industrial athlete, athletic trainer, physical therapist, to a competitive athlete.
So something that I wanted to get into was the whole movement for people who are older and everything. That, like, I don't think most people who are, I would say, 40 and over aren't doing any kind of extracurricular activities that involve like an actual sport. So like playing basketball, throwing a frisbee, something like that. And that's, it's kind of odd that that happens over time, because, you would feel like we would pick up some kind of activity as we get older. There's so many things. And even, a lot of people who might have kids or something, you would think that they would be doing that because they have a kid and, kids playing t-ball or baseball by that point. But, it just seems like once people get to a certain age, they just don't do those sports anymore. And those are the type of things that we kind of have to do as humans just to get in that activity, because our prehistoric ancestors, they were doing gardening and hunting, and those things are very can be very strenuous on the body. But nowadays we just go to the store and get food, so we don't have to do those bending knee activities and climbing and all these kinds of things. We don't have to do those anymore. So when you are working with those types of people, how do you explain to them how beneficial that is and how they're able to incorporate that?
So so you have to find their buy-in. That comes from like a psychosocial type of aspect of things. So sometimes I have to show them what they think they can do and that they can't do that, right? So sometimes when I just ask somebody to reach for their toes, right? I'm like, hey, stand up and reach to your toes. And
Mm.
they can't. They get to like here. I'm like, okay, how do you put on your shoes? And they show me that they sit down and they put their shoes on. I'm like, okay, so you can't put on your shoes like this? They're like, no. So they can't even stand like this.
Mm.
Right. So I almost just, or hey, can you squat for me? Simple things.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they say, oh my God, I can't do any of that. I'm like, let's get you there. I
Mm.
promise once I get you there, your system almost says, I want to do more. I want to move better. And so it's the buy-in and it's the showing them what they can't do. And so a lot of times, I work with people that they just don't care. They
Oh.
don't care if they can't move. They don't see the point of it. And then, so say I had 50 people I was working, maybe 10 of them want to move better. Well, I'm going to focus on them. I'll still plant the seed in the other people's training
Mm.
or conversation, but I really will give 110% to those 10 people who want to move. Because if I can help one person out of those 50, I'm happy. I'm very happy. And just this last week, I'm the co-coach for my for my daughter's cheer team. And we had to teach the girls how to do cartwheels. Some
Mm.
of them could not do cartwheels. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like every kid should be able to bust out a cartwheel. But like you said, people don't do things. People aren't asked. Like we're playing video games and watching YouTube videos versus like getting outside and playing and doing natural things, getting out in the environment. And so I showed him a cartwheel and I thought, well, by God, I'm 37 years old, still got my cartwheel, still got my round off. But how do we get their buy-in? It goes back to goal setting. Let's set a goal. Let's set a goal to where instead of sitting when your kid's at T-ball and sitting in the stands on your phone, like, why don't you walk
Mm.
around the field until they're done?
Yeah.
Why don't you find a physical activity? And so some of the times I'll talk to it on the medical side, like being osteoporotic, like having weakening bones. And they're like, oh, my grandmother had that. Like, I don't want weak bones. Like she had fractures or compression fractures in her spine. And I'm like, well, you do understand what causes that? Well, just being old. Absolutely not. Lack of movement. My bones stay strong because muscles and tendons pull on it.
Mm.
Right. So 15 years ago, if you were to do body comp and my bone density versus now, got thick ass bones now because I'm constantly challenging it. So if I were to get hurt and I were to fall over, I'm going to recover so much quicker than that person 15 years ago because I've created that.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, okay, so I don't have to be on that medicine. No, work out, move, put your body under resistance. A body under load, under tension is a much stronger body carrying things, right? So, get out and just carry heavy things more often. Go for a hike with a heavy backpack. I was part of the Go Ruck series. It allowed comrades or drill sergeants or whatever, people in the military, veterans. I don't know if you ever heard of Go Ruck, but it allows them to pretty much train people again. People sign up for these rucks and you have a rucksack on your back and, you're pretty much drilled for 12 to 24 hours and it's just fun. So, people like that group environment. So put a heavy backpack on, go for a walk. That's going to actually sustain for 24 to 48 hours on your body versus like jumping on the treadmill for 45 minutes. Like a body under load is a stronger body. So I think going back to your question, because I don't think I answered it yet, but finding the buy-in and their why is a big part of getting people motivated to move more. Our culture really depicts, like our environment really depicts how we're going to move. And so if that person, doesn't want it, you're going to have to figure out what would make them want it more.
Absolutely. By the way, earlier I was checking, and yeah, it was Matt Vincent. I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure, but
He man crush, man. I'm
yeah.
talking when he started getting those tats on his thighs, I was like, okay, all right. Thank you, Matt. So, oh,
He
he's
was
a
a pretty
wonderful.
Yeah, he was a pretty cool guy to talk to. But yeah, he's got a it's called the So podcast.
Yeah.
Plugging him right now because he's had on some really cool people on his podcast, and they talk about all the injuries and stuff that they've
Mhm.
been through. Matt's been through some crazy stuff, and
Dude,
he
surgeries. I
yeah,
think it's called knee. Was it knee or hip replacement?
it was one of the two. I don't
Yeah.
remember. And then he wanted to do a marathon after that. He was telling me
Mm,
that was one of his goals. I think it was either like a half marathon or a full. I can't remember. It might have
yeah.
even been a 5K. I don't remember. But it was just something that had to do with endurance, and he was not
Mhm.
used to it,
Right.
and he just randomly decided to do it, and I was like, impressive. But
Mhm.
I think he already did it, and he was just going through all the training that he had to do to get his body adapt to that, and that's something that I think a lot of people have a misconception of is like how quickly they can do something. I think a lot of people, even with like females, they'll, me and my wife talk about this all the time. Is like females think, oh, if I, do bicep curls for one day, I'm going to look like a man and be all like
Mm.
bulky and stuff. It's like, that's not going to happen. But yeah, I think people, they have a misconception of like how quickly they should get into something. If like you have no experience at all and you want to do a marathon, that doesn't mean go run 5 miles and find out where your fitness is.
No, it's go
That's,
find a functional movement coach and see what category you're in
yeah, yeah.
and
That,
find a better foundation.
yeah, and building that foundation, how you're going through everybody's their skill set,
Mhm.
let's you got to assess first, where are you? What kind of foundation are we going to build on top of? And then, once you're able to find that out, then you can build those functional movements and
Mhm.
then go to, the heavier stuff like you were talking about. You don't want to get these people in the barbell section when they haven't been able to master the kettlebells because now it's like you're starting from ground zero all over again.
Correct. Yeah, and they're going to end up with an injury, and then they're going to stop altogether. They're not going to come back. And so the big thing is that general physical preparedness. So I always think like if there was a fire in my home, can I grab my 16-year-old daughter and my 5-year-old son and get out?
Mm,
Like real life scenario. Like if I get to the point to where I can't, what am I doing in life? Like seriously, like move quick, move quick. But it's just, oh, yeah, it's a fascinating thing like that people don't want to move well, so finding out kind of what their goal is and being able to create a plan that is sustainable and repeatable and efficient,
mm,
right? So that's kind of how I look at it. I'm like, well, how much time do you have during a week to train?
yeah,
Oh, 2 days a week. Well, what can I build you to make sure that you want to repeat it? What can I build you that doesn't wear you out for 4 days to where you can't do normal things? Like, we know our life doesn't revolve around fitness, but if we don't have it, we're going to be in a nursing home.
yeah, yeah. I was.
Yeah, but
Do you watch? Do you follow Squat University on
I don't
Instagram?
know.
So phenomenal. Do you have Instagram?
I do.
Okay, so definitely go on there and follow Squat University. It's a guy named Aaron Horschnig. I think he's in St. Louis, Missouri, and he has one of the best Instagram pages as far as like teaching people how to move functionally. It's called Squat University, but it's got pretty much everything. But they do mainly focus on just the movements of squatting, like having good Achilles mobility and
Mm-hmm.
fixing your psoas and stuff like that.
Right.
Got great stuff on there. But the other day, I think he posted about it was like an old man, and he was like I think he was like going to his garage or something and dusting off some equipment, and he was trying to get a kettlebell. He started dragging it out.
Oh,
Yeah,
I've seen
but
that. I cried.
Oh,
I I cried because, you know, I've trained the 75-year-olds in kettlebells. That's what I've done. And I remember one lady, you know, coming into my gym and kind of being that old person going, I can't play with the kettlebells. I can't do that. To, you know, 6 months later, she's busting out, you know, double kettlebell swings and squats, you know, with 30 pounds. And it's just like, we can do this. You can do this. You just have to want it, and you have to do it systematically. Follow that pyramid of that foundation, conditioning, and then skill set.
yeah. But to finish what happened, the reason why the guy was doing for everybody who hadn't seen this, the reason why the older man was grabbing this kettlebell and trying to move it and lift it, and you can see his wife is like watching him. She's all confused. The reason
Mm-hmm.
why he was doing it, at the end, you'll see he does it in the same motion he's picking up the kettlebell. He's trying to pick up his granddaughter, and he's trying to show, and the whole thing is about, hey, if you learn how to, lift weights and do these
But what
moves.
was he holding her to do?
Oh, it was to put the star on the tree, wasn't
Yes. You know, so he picks up the kettlebell and then he'll just hold it out, and then he'll put it down. He'll pick up the kettlebell and he'll hold it out. And then I was thinking, well, what on earth is this man doing? You know, why is he doing this? And then it's so touching to come in that Christmas Eve night, pick up his granddaughter. She puts and I died. I died. It was precious. Yeah. But, you know, any type of training is good as long as it's reproducible.
Yeah, yeah, and that, I think functional movement is something that's definitely missing from our hustle and bustle, busy lives. Because when we are able to actually focus on the fact that we aren't moving,
Mm-hmm.
focus on the fact that we have become very stationary as people, then we can realize, this is where your aches and pains are coming from. The reason why your hip hurts is because you've shortened the length of your connection in your abdominals and your hip. I mean, in your quads, and so
Yeah.
now that's why you've got pain there. But we don't think about that. We're just thinking, I'm sitting.
I'm sitting, right? And that's part of like my job now. Like when I have somebody who comes into the office and they have discomfort, major part of my job is education, right? So like you were saying, sitting, right? So my hip flexors, right? They start on the front of my thigh, they go in, they hug, they come out, and they attach to my last 5 vertebrae. And then of course my quadricep, you know, it starts up high, crosses my hip joint, comes all the way down and attaches below my knee. And so people have knee pain and they think it's a problem with their knee.
Hmm.
No, it's because you sit all the time and now your quads are inefficient and it's pulling on your knee joint, which now, yeah, your knee's affected. Foam roll. Get on the floor and foam roll your quad.
Hmm.
Get up, get into extension, get a desk that stands, get your hips into extension, activate your glutes. They're tired. Your glutes have gluteal amnesia. And
Hmm.
now you have back pain and knee pain because of it. Get up and move. And once I tell them that, they're like, oh, I didn't know my quad crossed my hip and my knee. And I didn't know my psoas and iliacus go into my hip and then come out into my spine. Where were you in science class in the 7th grade? Like, we lose that, and it's just bringing it back. And so at times I really like Instagram and stuff, because I watch some people and they're educating people again. You know, there's DPTs, physical therapists, going, if you have back pain, do these 3 moves, you know. And I have a YouTube channel, Coach Laura Dill, if anybody's interested, but I do a bunch of stuff on there related to simple movements, simple things that any human can do. It doesn't take an athlete to do it. You know, we're all athletes at one point, you know, so just getting up and making things easy for the average person.
Awesome. Well, it's about time to wrap this up. You gave some awesome information about all the things that you do, and how you got started, and how you got to where you are now, especially with all the functional movements. That's really cool information that I think everybody should follow, what you do, and learn about that kind of stuff. If you could just give everybody all your information, like, you just said your YouTube page,
Yep.
and then all the other places that people can find you.
Absolutely. So of course you can find me on Facebook, just under Laura Dill. YouTube, again, Coach Laura Dill. I believe my Instagram is Laura Dill underscore SFG, Roman numeral 2. I don't spend a lot of time on Instagram, but when I do post, it is 100% fitness related, about kettlebells. I do put like 1 minute videos about in my garage. My gym is in my garage now. I go from 2,500 square feet gym to a little bitty space, but it's very efficient for me. But I'll post just videos of me doing a training session. I do have some videos on my YouTube that you don't need any equipment to do, just moving better. They're kind of circuit type things. And then, of course, you can reach out to me at lauralyn.dill@gmail.com. If you have questions, if you want to get started and do a functional movement screen, I can actually do it virtually. And I can produce a program for you based off of that. A lot of times I do a lot of pro bono work. So just reach out, see how I can help you.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for doing this. It's been a pleasure talking to you and meeting you and finding out about all the things you do.
Yes. And DeAndre Porter, I met him because he was one of my industrial athletes.
Yeah, he was probably one of the most inflexible people you ever met.
He's moving more. He is moving more, and he's doing great. So very proud of him.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.